Last video, I talked about why sleep is important, why you should go to sleep, why you should sleep enough, what the negative side effects are of not sleeping enough, especially for long periods of time, consistently, and what the specific times, in my opinion, are at which you should go to bed and wake up, and again, why. If you want to watch that video first, which I highly recommend because it is a precursor to this video, go click somewhere up here. Not sure where the info button is, but you're going to find the video there. So I'm going to assume that you've watched the previous video. As was the case in the last video, I'm actually recording this after I just got out of bed. Only in this case, it's early in the morning, so my voice might still be a little deep, a little scratchy, and also I might look a little rough around the edges because I'm going to go hit a workout after this, and then I'm going to go take a shower. So bear with me. I'm assuming you've watched the previous video, right? Now that we've established the necessity for sleep, the necessity for consistent, quality, 8-hour at least sleep, how do you actually do that? Because many people who've gotten used to little sleep struggle to sleep a full 8 to 9 hours. I talked about this in the last video, how there are people who, have gone so far with their coping that they actually say they work better on 6 hours of sleep, which is a bunch of crap. But there are also a lot of people who feel quite tired and they would like to sleep more, and they really struggle with, getting those 8 or 9 hours of sleep in and don't really know why. Also, there are lots of people who don't really sleep through the night. Maybe their sleep is very light. This was something I had a problem with, I struggled with in the past. Maybe they wake up multiple times throughout the night, just from like small sounds, maybe no sounds at all. They need to go to the bathroom, maybe, all of that stuff. Then there's people who struggle to fall asleep in the first place, and I talked about this. This is also something I struggled with. They don't know how, they can't stop thinking, the mind's racing, or maybe they feel very energetic, their heart rate is up, etc. As someone who really struggled with sleep during his teens, this was like the worst period for me. As a kid, I did occasionally sleep very little and read a lot. I talked about this as well in the last video, but I did manage to go to sleep, generally speaking. It was just that I would oftentimes be incredibly tired at the end of the day, fall asleep, and then wake up super early to read. But my teens were really the worst time of my life when it comes to sleep. Actually, let me close the window real quick because the birds are insanely loud. So as someone who really struggled with sleep during his teens, my first question to you is, how much caffeine do you drink throughout the day, and when? During my teens, I was drinking 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 cups of Earl Grey for breakfast. Took another half a liter canteen of tea to school. And after that, I would often buy, Coke or something similar. Already talked about this in the diet video, my caffeinated soda addiction. So all of that caffeinated soda that I really enjoyed drinking, that was on top of almost a full liter of tea that I had had during, the first half of the day, roughly. To people drinking 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 cups of coffee a day, this might not sound too crazy. Obviously, it's a large amount of just liquid to drink. Coffee is very, very high caffeine. in comparison, but in terms of the caffeine I was drinking, might not sound too strange, too alien. The truth is, at least in present-day Western societies, I can't really speak too much on other societies, but I know that at least in, Middle Eastern societies, tea is also very prevalent, so I could imagine that it's maybe similar there. I think coffee is also a big thing in places like Turkey. But at least in, Western societies, which I can speak on, the majority of the population is way too caffeinated. Now you might say, well, caffeine makes me productive. What do you mean? You're probably already coping by the time I'm saying this. And I haven't even gotten into it. Listen up. While caffeinated soda, like Coke, is already bad, obviously it has other cons as well. There's sugar in it, especially Coke, has, I don't know what it's called in English, like phosphorus acid or something, which is terrible for your bones, especially for your teeth, which it immediately comes into contact with. But, the caffeine content of Coke is not that crazy. Coffee, which is like the commonplace caffeinated beverage, this is the caffeinated beverage that I would argue is, drunk the most, contains crazy amounts of caffeine. Just to put this into perspective, the product, other than coffee, right, the finished, bottled, or in this case, usually canned product, with the highest caffeine content that you can buy is typically an energy drink, right? Coffee roughly has the same caffeine content as energy drinks. Obviously, energy drinks also contain some other stuff, but coffee is on par with energy drinks when it comes to caffeine per, liter, or whatever your preferred system of measurement may be. Most people are not aware that caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours when it's in the bloodstream. The reason I just mentioned how much caffeine coffee contains is because people don't just casually chug like 4 energy drinks a day. Unless they are, fucking crazy gamers, bro. Which, I'm gonna be honest with you, this was the kind of shit I was doing when I was like in my late teens. I was buying fucking pallets of energy drinks and just chugging that stuff. So I do have the rights to joke about this. No, but on a serious note, very few people drink that amount of energy drink or caffeinated soda. But there are a lot of people who drink like, 2 or 3, maybe even 4 cups of coffee a day. Again, coffee has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours when it's in the bloodstream. And 5 hours is already long. That's a big chunk of the day. But even then, many people don't realize that this is the half-life of caffeine. I think there are quite a few people who have read this fact somewhere, who are generally aware of this 5 to 6 hour period, but a lot of people don't consciously consider what the word half-life actually means. After 5 to 6 hours of having a cup of coffee, about half a cup's worth of caffeine is still in your system. So, biochemically speaking, having a cup of coffee at 4 or 5 p.m. and going to sleep at 10 p.m. is the equivalent of drinking like a small cup of coffee, half a cup of coffee, right before bed. And you might listen to this as someone who casually drinks a lot of coffee and be like, well, no, that can't be true, right? Yes, that is what the word half-life means. If you drink a cup of coffee at 4:30 p.m., that's essentially like drinking, a small cup, half a cup of coffee right before going to sleep. Now, usually when people are confronted with this fact, the excuses come rolling in. My favorite is, I don't feel caffeinated. I can still sleep. So this one is iconic to me. One of my favorite excuses in general when it comes to health-related stuff is it doesn't feel bad to me. Coming from a person who has had unhealthy habits for years. That's like talking to a heroin addict. And I know this is an extreme example, but let's be honest here. That's like talking to someone who is addicted to heroin, and they've been addicted to heroin for years and have managed to stay alive somehow. And the guy says, well, I don't feel bad. Dude, you're addicted to heroin. You have been addicted to heroin for years. You have no idea what it's like to feel normal. I mean, you'd get... I'm at a loss for words here, because this actually made me laugh reading my own notes here. Not feeling caffeinated with half a cup of coffee in your system, and I'm using this measurement style. Obviously I'm talking about the caffeine within the coffee, but I think this is a good way of making it very understandable for people who won't drink coffee. So not feeling caffeinated with half a cup of coffee in your system, after that system has come down from a full cup, is like drinking 8 beers and then saying you don't feel drunk 3 hours later. You might not be completely pissed anymore, and you've probably also gotten used to the state of being drunk, but dude, you're still drunk though. Let's be real here. Going from highly caffeinated to somewhat caffeinated obviously feels like a drop in energy because you've got less caffeine in your system. That's still way more caffeinated than someone who had a cup like 12 hours ago, though. Even if you subjectively don't feel amped, right? Maybe you're someone who drinks a lot of caffeine, and so having half a cup of coffee's worth of caffeine in your system doesn't feel crazy. It feels normal to you. It will still keep you from sleeping, which, is a fully relaxed state. You might not feel amped while you're walking around, while you're working, while you're talking to people, but once you actually lie down and try to do nothing and fall asleep, you will realize, dude, I am still kind of energized, And even if you've gotten used to it so much that you can actually go to sleep while still, quite caffeinated, which a lot of people are capable of that at this point, the sleep is going to be terrible because the caffeine prevents you from going under fully. It prevents you from really sleeping deeply, fully, just getting that quality rest. You're not going to get that. The caffeine is keeping you stressed out, is keeping you kind of semi-awake. So the sleep is going to be very light, kind of comparable to the kind of sleep you get when you take a short nap throughout the day. And in addition to this lack of proper deep sleep, the fact that you're constantly sleeping light also means that your sleep is much more easily interrupted. Because of course, when you're not under very deep, when you're sleeping very, very light, the tiniest noise, the smallest disturbance might wake you. So not only is your sleep worse already, you're also at a high risk of waking up a lot, which means you're getting even less of that already lower quality sleep. So even if you go to bed and actually fall asleep at a decent time, your sleep will be lower quality by a long shot. And this is something I haven't mentioned yet, you will probably wake up sooner because your body feels like you're going to sleep even though there's still stuff to do because there's caffeine in your system. So it'll probably sleep like the bare minimum of what it can before it feels too, nervous about doing things. And you'll wake up, after maybe something like 6 hours, maybe even less, and then feel really tired a couple of hours later. Unless, of course, you immediately drink more caffeine. So my recommendation would be no caffeine after noon, unless you're planning to stay up very late. And in this case, just adjust for your estimated bedtime. So noon is it correlates roughly with the bedtime I talked about in the last video. Generally speaking, this would be a 10 p.m. bedtime, a 7 a.m. wake up. So if you're planning to go to bed at 2 a.m., maybe you can drink caffeine until 4 p.m., 4 in the afternoon. That would be the general gist of things. And I actually reached this conclusion through personal experimentation a couple of years ago. So I was already doing this, drinking caffeine until roughly around noon. And then funnily enough, this is exactly what neuroscientist Andrew Huberman, who, is fairly well known, has a big podcast, probably not a lot of guys watching this video know him, recommended in a podcast of his I watched where he talked about sleep and what his recommendations would be for caffeine consumption. This was kind of a boost in confidence, kind of a satisfying moment, because he obviously reached this conclusion through his analysis of the scientific literature that he reads, right? So he researched this scientifically, and I reached essentially the exact same conclusion just by doing personal experimentation. Huberman also recommends not drinking caffeine immediately after waking up to allow your body to wake up naturally. Get your body going properly first, right? And then drink caffeine. This is something I talked about in the last video as well, how your body is not fully awake when you wake up and you've actually slept properly. And caffeine is kind of an artificial way of making yourself more alert, more awake, if you will, more energized. So it's better to allow your body to wake up fully, be in that fully awake state naturally, and then boost that even more with caffeine. Drinking caffeine once you're fully awake, essentially, reduces or even nullifies the caffeine crash a lot of people get in the afternoon. And that's precisely for this reason. Because if you're drinking something like coffee right after waking up, you're not allowing your body to fully wake up on its own. You're artificially pushing it into this heightened state. And so when the caffeine starts to slowly wear off, you crash completely, or not completely, but significantly, because you haven't been in a fully awake state at any point throughout that first half of the day. So wake up, as said in the last video, do a quick workout to get your body going, to, release some adrenaline, get the heart pumping. This doesn't have to be I'm not talking about a full workout session at the gym here, lifting heavy weights for 2 hours. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes maybe even. You can do 2 minutes if you're actually being active. I just do 50 jumping jacks when I wake up. That's enough. Gets the heart pumping, you're awake, you're ready to go. Do that. No caffeine until at least 90 minutes later. 90 to 120 is, again, what Andrew Huberman recommends. I tested this, would definitely endorse. This is a good recommendation. and then only drink caffeine until noon. Again, as mentioned in the last video, these recommendations are for a sleep cycle where you go to bed before midnight and wake up before 9 a.m. And as I already mentioned in this video, the general recommendation I would give for the average person would be about a 10 p.m. bedtime and a 7 a.m. wake up time. Quick recap. In the last video, I talked about having tested various different sleep cycles, both, different times throughout the 24-hour day at which I slept, and also different sleep cycles entirely. And this one is by far the best long term. Your circadian rhythm, which is essentially your natural, your body's internal day-night cycle. If you want to know more, as I said in the last video, just go ahead and Google circadian rhythm. Heavily impacts your quality of sleep. Sleeping during the day will be worth less, even if you're getting more total hours of sleep than sleeping at night. So, due to the circadian rhythm and the fact that your body kind of has an idea of when it wants to sleep, when it's supposed to sleep, and when it's not, sleeping for 10 hours even during the day is going to be worth less than sleeping just a good, solid, quality 8 hours at night. And another Huberman tip here, which I found very helpful and greatly endorse, is focusing on the wake-up time rather than the bedtime to get into this solid cycle. This is a little counterintuitive for a lot of people because the bedtime, especially if we think of, childhood, maybe our early teens, is kind of what we associate with a regulated sleep cycle. And a lot of adults will just go back to this when they try to get their sleep in order. But actually, if you're focusing on the bedtime, this isn't as important as the wake-up time, because the wake-up time dictates the rest of the day. When you go to bed, doesn't really. You can go to bed at a later time if you just had so much to do that day, still wake up at the same time, still have essentially the same day you had. Obviously, you're going to be more tired, but then because you're more tired, you're probably going to go to bed a little earlier, right? And then that wake-up time is going to feel just right, or maybe even quite satisfying. Maybe you have like 10 hours until that wake-up time. You might end up waking up a little earlier. So focusing on when you go to bed is going to lead to you maybe sleeping in a little later, things like that. Because you have a fixed bedtime, but then maybe you fall asleep later, or you sleep worse, etc. So if you focus on the bedtime, but don't go hard on the wake-up time, what's essentially going to happen is you're going to have these kind of slumpy, groggy days where, because you didn't start your day right, the day feels like shit. Even though you have a fixed bedtime and you're kind of like, what? I'm trying to get my sleep in order, but these days are not the way they should be. The wake-up time is the important part. And on this note, I actually want to say, wake up when you are supposed to wake up and get out of bed and get the day going. One of the worst habits a lot of people have that I just don't understand, or I do understand how it comes to be, but it's incredibly harmful, is snoozing their alarm, or even worse, setting like 10 different alarms. Don't. This is going to tell you, I don't want to get out of bed. Which maybe initially you don't. You might say, well, I don't want to get out of bed. So what? You want to tell your brain to actively engage in this thought process? You want to tell your brain to, think this even more? When the alarm rings, you wake up, you get up, you turn off the alarm, you go to work or do whatever your morning routine is. But you don't snooze the alarm, and you don't set like 15 different alarms. And in case you're saying, well, it's gotten to the point where I can basically turn the alarm off or snooze it while I'm still half asleep. That's a stupid excuse. Just put whatever your alarm clock is far enough away that you have to move across the room. And you're not going to be capable of this. It's not possible to be half asleep while you're getting out of bed and turning off your alarm, which is like 4 meters away. That's not going to happen. Unless really you're kind of awake, you just don't want to get up. What about having to go to the bathroom at night? This might sound like a bit of a weird transition right now. What is this guy talking about? We've spoken of specific bedtimes, specific wake-up times, but what if you are in bed for a solid 8 to 9 hours, you go to bed at the right time, you wake up at the right time and get out of bed, but your sleep in between is kind of You wake up a lot, you toss and turn a lot, maybe you have to go to the bathroom like every night. We've talked about caffeine, so maybe we should also talk about other food and drink. And before we get into the regular stuff, I want to give a quick note on alcohol and weed while we're on the topic of drugs. Because alcohol and weed are the typical contenders when it comes to people dealing with their inability specifically to fall asleep in the evening/night. So let's just say real quick, both are bad for sleep. And some potheads might raise an eyebrow right now because they swear by a good night blunt. While weed makes you sleepy, without a shadow of a doubt, and can help people with insomnia fall asleep, the sleep quality, again, is worse. So ideally, fix your caffeine intake, fix your bedtimes, and other stuff I'll talk about first, then see if maybe you can just manage to fall asleep without any drugs at all. Smoking weed with tobacco is especially bad because nicotine raises the heart rate. So again, even though the weed might make you able to fall asleep, the sleep itself is going to be worse. Alcohol is also bad for sleep. The sleep quality when you have alcohol in your system is just terrible, really. And it also makes you wake up earlier. So all in all, just don't drink alcohol before bed. It's not going to help you in any capacity. Now, getting back to what I said before, if going to the bathroom is a problem, drink plenty throughout the day. Stop drinking any beverages 1 hour before bed. Doesn't matter what. No beverages, no water, no nothing. 1 hour before bed. Go pee at the very end of your nighttime routine, and then go to bed. You may still have the urge to go to the bathroom. You may still wake up and want to go to the bathroom if this has become more of a habit than a necessity. But unless your bladder is literally about to explode, unless you're actually, and I'm talking about physically, going to piss yourself, just try to go back to sleep. Now you might say, oh, this isn't possible. I can't sleep when I have to pee. Again, we're talking about you want to pee, but you don't really have to pee, like badly. You can train to still go to sleep. That might sound wild to you, but I actually did this. And you may think I'm a little crazy for that, but I like to try crazy shit. Let me tell you, I did this. It is possible. If you need to pee, like a little, and you would usually go to the bathroom, you are about to get up, don't. Just go back to sleep. And if you can't, just lie there and force yourself to not go to the bathroom because you don't have to. You just want to because you would pee like a little bit. Don't. Eating right before bed is also bad because digestion takes up a lot of energy, depending on what you eat, but generally speaking, it does, especially if you've had like a big meal. And I've heard people say in the past, I sleep well on a full stomach. This is, another one of those common statements. I've heard multiple people say this. No. Again, you fall asleep well on a full stomach, but the sleep quality is worse because your body can't relax and rest fully. The digestive tract actually uses a lot of your body's resources when it's working on that food. So, yes, you feel satisfied, you feel full, you feel a little bit sleepy, groggy after having like a very big meal. But this doesn't mean that the sleep you're gonna get is gonna be higher quality. It means the opposite. So no big meals in the last 2 hours before bed. No smaller meals in the last hour before. Ideally, no snacking either. And your sleep is going to be better. Trust me. Next, I'm going to briefly mention the point most are probably familiar with. Bright, especially blue light, and, screens, digital media, just in general. Looking at screens, getting a lot of bright blue light into your eyes before going to sleep is going to make your body think it's daytime. Again, your circadian rhythm impacts your ability to sleep and also the quality of your sleep. So messing with your body's perception of what time it is, really not a great idea if you want to get quality sleep. Also, digital media, and this is something I think is not mentioned enough in relation to this. We talk about the light aspect a lot, the blue light aspect. But digital media is often very exciting as well. It gets your brain all riled up. If you're on social media, which especially nowadays is very fast paced, and I have a lot to say about social media in general. I'd recommend you don't use it much, if at all. But yeah, social media is very fast paced. Nonsense like, don't get me started on something like TikTok, Instagram. You're scrolling through lots of different content, various different topics. You're switching topics within a couple of seconds. So this gets your brain up and working like crazy. This is for all of those people who say, oh, my thoughts are racing at night. I can't go to sleep. You have overloaded your brain with an insane amount of information right before going to bed if you are on social media. YouTube as well can be very engaging for the brain. Obviously depends on what you watch, what you listen to, but if you're watching some 10-minute, very highly edited video and it's very energetic or it's very engaging in like a social kind of way, there's a lot of people talking to each other, it's very loud or it's very active, this is going to engage your brain quite a bit. And your brain is going to try to be a lot more alert because it thinks there are actual things going on that it should be alert for. To settle down, no laptop, no TV, no being on your phone in the last at least half hour before going to bed. Ideally, even a little more, but I'm going to mention in a minute why half an hour is probably fine. Also, never, and I cannot stress this enough, never use your phone in bed. This is 100% a terrible habit because your brain will associate your bed with the activities you do in it, just like it associates any other place with the specific activities you do there. And your brain should associate your bed with getting tired. This is going to help you sleep big time. If you associate your bed with, hanging out, being on your phone, that's going to make it harder for you to sleep. You should not be lying in bed if you don't intend to sleep, read before you sleep, or, do the sexy dance. Those are fine. Again, only be in bed for reading purposes if you intend to go to sleep afterwards. But specifically, your bed should only be for sleeping. Either for, actually sleeping or sleeping with someone. And those are the things your brain should associate with it, which will help you to go to sleep. Not only is doing other things in bed bad, not only is just chilling in bed bad, as opposed to, chilling on the sofa during the day, but specifically being on your phone, which has all of these different things on it, right? You message people on your phone. You answer work calls on your phone or work texts. You check social media. Some people play games on their phone or watch movies. You've got all of these different activities sort of combined into this one thing. And if you use that thing in bed, your brain is going to have a very hard time associating your bed with just sleep. Because all of these things are part of your phone and what you do on your phone. And so if you use your phone in bed, that's what your brain is going to associate with your bed, which is a lot, which is essentially aspects of almost every part of your life. So don't use your phone in bed. Whatever you do, don't. And, this, safe to say this goes for, laptops and stuff as well. You should not have a TV that you're watching while you're in bed. Just none of that nonsense. You can read in bed before you go to sleep. That's fine. So, no, actually, something I should mention is a lot of people make the excuse that, well, my phone is my alarm. What they will often do is go to bed and then while they're already in bed, set an alarm on their phone. Dude, set the alarm before you go to bed. Put your phone, as I mentioned before, somewhere like 3 or 4 meters away from your bed. So you do have to get up to turn off the alarm, then go to bed. Or, and this might sound crazy, buy an alarm clock for like $2 at the local dollar store. I know. Crazy, right? So yeah, this was just a quick side rant, but that's one of those dumb excuses that people make a lot. And I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm trying to help you stop making these nonsensical excuses. Be real with yourself. Stop coping. Stop trying to make excuses for your bad habits. Be real. You want to go to sleep, so do what you can. After going to bed, and this is why I said that maybe half an hour before going to bed is fine in regards to watching stuff on your laptop or TV. After going to bed, read. Not on your phone, again. Read a book, okay? Something like a book. It can also be a magazine, sure. But a book is actually better because magazines have more of a connection to the real world, the outside world, things going on, right? So it's gonna have you be more active, have your brain, be more engaged with things going on in your life, as opposed to a book, which is usually significantly more removed from your active day-to-day life. Read a book until you get tired enough to go to sleep. And this is going to happen if you're not using crazy bright light. If you're reading for quite a while, you will get very tired. Reading is an activity that naturally makes you tired. And then go sleep. One last big thing I haven't talked about is working out. Working out right before going to bed is bad because it ups the heart rate, obviously, and releases adrenaline. So your body is in go mode. This should be pretty obvious, but a lot of people do like to work out in the afternoon, and in some cases even in the evening. That's fine as long as there is a significant gap between your workout and your bedtime. So no working out in the last 2 hours before going to bed. I think that should be fine. And what's important is that after you finish your workout, you chill out, you relax. So finish your workout and then maybe go lie on the couch and watch some stuff or read for the next 1 or 2 hours, right? Or 2 hours rather. Don't work out 1 hour before going to bed. That's not a good idea. However, working out in general, working out at all during the day greatly improves your sleep during the night because the body is not only mentally but also physically exhausted. Our natural way of living, of being, the way we evolved to be, is to exhaust our mental and our physical capacities throughout the day. So a lot of people actually struggle with sleep, and a lot of people actually toss and turn a lot, move a lot during sleep, wiggle around a lot, because they don't move enough during the day. Your body and your mind should be exhausted, and that's when you're going to have the greatest quality sleep. This is something I can absolutely attest to regarding, the last couple of months before I started the carnivore diet that I'm currently on. During this time, I was bulking and working out 6 times a week, and that was just my strength workouts. I would also do some agility stuff on the side. So I was moving a lot. Also, I had to, travel quite far to go to university because I live on the other edge of the city, essentially. So I have to cross almost the entire city to get to university. So I was walking a lot. I was working out every day, essentially. And that made me very tired. And I actually got like 8 to 9 hours of just deep sleep with no issue whatsoever. I slept like a baby. So yeah, working out is great for your sleep. If you're not working out yet, by the way, go check out this video. Actually, both of these videos. I'm going to link both number 1 and number 2 up here. Go check out the first video. Listen to my advice, do what I said in the first video. So watch the first one, go work out, and then go and watch the second one. One final point before we finish this video, which I assume is already very long because I've been recording for what is almost 2 hours now. So yeah, let's get to the final point. Make sure there's enough fresh air in the room. Oxygen is very important for quality recovery. It's very important for proper sleep. Obviously, having a low oxygen content in the room does make you tired, does make you groggy, but it doesn't make for quality sleep. You get quality sleep when you have a lot of fresh air, good oxygen. Usually it's also good when the room is a little cooler. So open your windows while doing your nighttime routine. When you decide to go to bed, go open the windows and then do everything you do before going to bed. And if the temperatures allow, if maybe you don't live in an incredibly cold area and your blanket is maybe warm enough, leave the window open overnight. If it's not too loud, if it's a possibility, just leave it open. This is actually better. Now, that was a very long list. You can go through once or twice if you have to, check these tips. Go see if you maybe already follow some of these or if some of these are worse for you than others. I think caffeine is the big one for a lot of people, but a lot of the other ones I mentioned are also quite significant. It's just that things like the blue light thing, the screen thing, is something a lot of people already know, even though they might make excuses for why they still don't stick to it. But yeah, go through it once or twice if you have to. Check for the specific things that you need to work on. And I hope these 2 videos on sleep covered the topic decently enough. I could have talked about even more stuff. I could have gone more in depth, but this is something I've been researching and actively experimenting with for years. So there are lots of little tidbits, and I did try to boil it down to the most important things I wanted to talk about in these 2 videos. I try to cover the general points that I think kind of summarize a lot of the other stuff. If you do still have questions though, right? If there are specifics, if there are little tidbits you do want to know, and maybe you aren't satisfied with all the things I already talked about, or if you have some suggestion for something to talk about in the future, maybe you have a suggestion for a follow-up video on this at some point in the future, go ahead and leave a comment. You can ask me anything you want. You can recommend any topic you want. I'm always happy to oblige. And yeah, if you found these videos helpful, if sleep is something you struggle with, the way I'm struggling with my words here because I've been recording for a very long time. If sleep is something you struggle with and you've gained some knowledge, some insight through these 2 videos, if you enjoyed yourself, if you liked listening to me talk to you in my bathrobe while also very groggy still myself, go ahead and leave a like. I'm going to try to stop rambling here because I can barely speak anymore. Yeah, go ahead and leave a like. I would very much appreciate that if you enjoyed these videos, if they helped you out. And if you want to see more from me in the future, I would also very much appreciate if you go and subscribe. That would help me out a lot. And if you do subscribe, feel free to activate the notification bell. Again, as I said in the previous videos, no idea what that does, no idea if there's any point to it or if there's any point to subscribing without activating the notification bell. Who knows? If you're going to go ahead and subscribe, why not activate the notification bell as well? Yeah, that being said, I hope you work on your sleep. I hope you go to sleep, as I said in the previous video, and I hope you do so the right way after I've now talked about a whole shopping list of things you can improve on to get those good, solid 8 to 9 hours of quality sleep.